A Starlink satellite just exploded and left behind trackable debris. Honda will pause production in Japan and China due to a chip shortage. And Trump Mobile's T1 still doesn't exist, but the company is now selling refurbished phones. It's Friday, December 19th, and here's a quick look at tech in the news this morning from Engadget. SpaceX said it experienced an anomaly with one of its Starlink satellites that was likely caused by a small explosion. In a social media post, Starlink wrote that the anomaly led to venting of the propulsion tank, a rapid decay in semi-major axis by about 2.5 miles, and the release of a small number of trackable, low relatively velocity objects. Orbital tracking company LeoLabs assessed that the issue was caused by an internal, energetic source rather than a collision with space debris or another object. SpaceX said it's working with NASA and the U.S. Space Force to track the remains of the object. It said, "The satellite is largely intact, tumbling, and will re-enter the Earth's atmosphere and fully demise within weeks. Its trajectory is well below the International Space Station, so it poses no risk to the lab or its crew." Starlink has yet to say how many pieces it is tracking, though. The incident happened just days after a Starlink satellite narrowly avoided a collision with a rival Chinese satellite from CAS Space last week. Starlink Vice President Michael Nichols said that the incident happened due to a lack of coordination between the two companies. Starlink's constellation consists of almost 9,300 active satellites, making up around 65% of all orbiting spacecraft, not including defunct units. That number grew by more than 3,000 this year alone. Launched aboard 121 separate SpaceX missions, around one every 3 days. The ripples of the auto industry's chip shortage are still being felt, as evidenced by Honda. Bloomberg reported on Wednesday that the automaker will suspend production in Japan on January 5th and the 6th. Honda did not specify the affected factories. In addition, all three of the automaker's Guangqi Honda Automobile plants in China will shut down from December 29th to January 2nd. The halt is an outgrowth of a chip shortage stemming from a recent geopolitical proxy war in the Netherlands, of all places. In October, the Dutch government, bowing to pressure from the Trump administration, seized control of the Chinese-owned chipmaker Nexperia. The company, which operates in the Netherlands, makes low-end chips that power automobiles, appliances, and other tech. The Dutch government's official explanation for the seizure was that Nexperia had serious governance shortcomings. It cited a concern that Nexperia's Chinese majority owner WingTech would move key technology out of Europe. However, the New York Times later reported that the Dutch government had known about those plans since 2019. Regardless, China retaliated by blocking exports of Nexperia-made chips. The Netherlands eventually suspended its intervention following constructive talks. China then relaxed but did not entirely remove its restrictions through exemptions to export controls. The uneasy resolution has not been enough to help supply chains fully recover, though. Honda initially anticipated that production would return to normal starting in late November. So much for that. Automaker consultant Ambrose Conroy, who is the CEO of Seraph Consulting, told Reuters back in November, "No one in the auto industry prepared for geopolitical disruption." Well, the T1 smartphone from Trump Mobile remains non-existent vaporware, but the company is still finding new ways to take people's money. Anyone who desperately wants to fund this sham can now buy a refurbished phone from the company. The business's website has listings for renewed models of the Samsung S24 and S23 and the iPhone 15 and 14. Gizmodo noticed that Trump Mobile is selling these other brands' phones for the same cost or sometimes more than the same refurbs from other retailers. Seems pretty par for the course. NBC News opted to order one of the T1 phones in August to track its development. However, it has not received much communication from the company on why the phone still has not shipped. NBC said in a statement neither Trump Mobile nor the Trump Organization responded to NBC News' multiple requests for comment on when the phone would be released and why it is delayed. Now, in case you missed the previous acts of sketchiness from Trump Mobile, the company insisted at its debut that the phone was made in the U.S. That seemed like a dubious claim, and the Made in the USA language was quietly removed from the website shortly after. Thanks for listening. There's more to these stories and more tech news at Engadget.com. This episode featured journalism from Steve Dent, Will Shanklin, and Anna Washenko, and it was voiced and produced from the sound studios of Spoken Layer. Enjoy your weekend. I'll be back on Monday morning with more tech news from Engadget.